Joining us on the line is the star of the new film Reagan, along with Dennis Quaid, Jon Voight. Jon plays former KGB agent Viktor Petrovich, whose life becomes inextricably linked with Ronald Reagan's. It's basically through his eyes that you see Reagan's story. Jon, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
It's great to be with you, Ben.
So, Jon, why don't you tell me how you first got involved in this project? I know this one has been years and years in the making.
Yeah, well, they came to me a couple of years ago. This was supposed to come out a year and a half ago, I guess, but the COVID hit, and then there was the strike, and then there was some difficulty with getting the CGI right, because it's tough on a certain kind of budget. You know, you have to get everything in place before you go after the CGI. So it was pushed back to this date. And it's a very good thing it was, really, because it's much more relevant at this time, quite amazingly relevant in a way, because of certain events that happened. So
why don't we talk about the relevance of the film? Obviously, you know, there are people like me. I was 4 years old when Ronald Reagan left office. Obviously, I know a fair bit about Reagan because I've read about Reagan. But for many voters, they don't know the Ronald Reagan era. They don't know Ronald Reagan's story. So this may be their first introduction to Ronald Reagan as a man and as a president. Right. Why do you think that's so relevant to people today?
Well, first of all, it's a story of a good president, a fellow who really did things quite well, but it shows the ups and downs, the real weight of the presidency, and how you deal with these serious issues on a daily basis. How does one keep one's head and make the proper decisions and just you're going to go through a tremendous amount of very serious stuff as a president of the United States, and this fellow did it with great grace, and he never took his eye off the ball, and we see how he confronted these very, very serious issues. We also see the people around him, most especially his wife Nancy, who was almost a partner. They had a wonderful love relationship and a wonderful friendship and working relationship too. So that's part of the story, and the movie shows all of this. The love story is very beautiful, and it's a very moving piece. But also it gives people a very good perspective on what must be the kind of character you have to be president of the United States.
And Jon, one of the fascinating things about your character is obviously because the movie is done sort of through your vantage point as a former KGB agent reviewing the story. It's a reminder, I think, to a lot of Americans who really don't remember the Soviet Union, just how evil the Soviet Union was, and the size of the enemy that the United States had to take on from the rise of the Russian Revolution all the way until the fall of the Soviet Union. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that threat.
Well, that threat is still with us. And, a lot of people, we're talking about all the damage that's been done by the KGB and the attack, the very, very, very clever, really, attack on our country through the insertion of people into our society, trying to, and there's a menu that was explained in a book by Ben Carson recently, and a book that came out in 1958 by a former FBI agent who put out the menu of the KGB. Nobody paid much attention to it, apparently, although it was in the congressional record. All these things that they intended. Let me give you just a small list. They intended to take over the universities. Their intention was to take God out of the schools, to create dissension between people based on race, based on gender, based on age, to take over both parties, both political parties, if possible, to take over the press, to take over Hollywood. And all of this was laid out. And if you read some of it, it's awfully clever. They know our situation. They know our society very, very well, and they know how to damage it. So that's what they set out to do as early, and it was explained, and we were on it, or somebody was on it, this FBI agent who wrote this book, The Naked Communist, in 1958. we knew about it, but we didn't do too, we didn't find our way to doing too much about it. And so we're left, when I look at it, and I did a lot of research, of course, to do this role. When I see it now, I say, well, they've pretty much accomplished everything. But these were long-term objectives that they had. They were they had a three-tier objective to take over the United States, and we're seeing almost, they must be amazed that they accomplished so much. But then, of course, Reagan came along and dissolved the Soviet Union. So that was put on pause, but they'd already set it in motion. And many, of the villains we see today are standing on on that menu right now and delivering it.
And Jon, one of the fascinating things about your character, obviously, again, you're playing a former KGB agent who's sort of viewing Reagan's life because you're following him throughout his life, from his rise as head of the Screen Actors Guild all the way to the presidency. But one of the things, I mean, you're an amazing actor, obviously, and what that means is that you have to inhabit the part. It can't just be a caricature. And so there are very few people in the world on planet Earth who have ever thought of themselves as evil while doing evil. What did it mean to actually play a KGB agent? How did you get yourself into that role?
Well, I figured that I visited the Soviet Union at the end, in 1991 when it was falling apart. Uh, and I had a great, I had a great way of connecting with the people because I was working on a film there, the first film that they had allowed in to film, and we filmed in Moscow, and we filmed in Ukraine, actually, where Chernobyl happened. It was part of the Soviet Union at that time. And I saw the terrible state of this communist influence on Russia. And I met a lot of the people, and the people were really suffering. I would say that communism brings misery. This is their basic product. The people walking in the streets, I walked on Red Square, right? And people don't look up. They wouldn't engage you. They wouldn't look in your eyes. They were frightened, perhaps, or just sad. And I felt for the people. And I got to know a few people. And I said, this will turn around. I said to this woman, lovely woman who spoke English, taught English in a Russian school. And she was very unhappy with the state of affairs and was said to me, this is never going to change, Jon. And I said, oh, no, it's going to change. You'll see. She said, no, you don't know. It'll never change. I mean, I felt for the people. So I made some friends there, and they were all in the same boat, the same suffering. And so I knew what was going on. When I played this character, I knew this complexity of this character. Now, if he signs on to do this work, he's having to appeal to a lot of people, and he has whatever he has of questions of what's going on. He has to keep to himself and all of that. But this is a young man who is in the Soviet system, and when he starts, and then he becomes influenced by this person that he's focused on, that he's been given the responsibility of reporting on the rise of this fellow, because they see he's talented, they see he's against communism, he's very outspoken, and then he shows some leadership ability. So he becomes a future danger, perhaps, and that's why they assign people like this fellow to gauge his progress and report. So my thought was, I think I knew pretty much what was going on in the Soviet Union at that time, and I also went to school on a very interesting fellow by the name of Yuri Bezmenov, who was a spy for the Soviet Union and became disturbed by what he saw, and left the Soviet Union, became a dissident, and wound up in the United States. And then, because of some conscience, he felt he had to explain what was really going on and warn people. And you can look him up, Yuri Bezmenov, and see what his description of what really the Soviet Union was doing in the United States. And so we've had some warnings, but we haven't been able to deal with them as well as we should. And now we're in this situation. So anyways, a lot of the things we're seeing now are directly responsible to these plans to bring down our country.
Well, Jon Voight. The movie is Reagan. It is out in theaters this weekend. Go get your ticket. Jon gives a great performance. Dennis Quaid gives, I think, maybe the best performance of his career in Reagan. It really is an astonishing attempt to channel Ronald Reagan, and it really succeeds. Jon, thanks so much for the time, and the movie's great. Congratulations.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you very much. Great to talk to you. Bye.
Are you tired of the lies and the twist of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.